Hello and welcome to another podcast about leadership and project management and delivery. It's called On the Payroll, and I thought it was funny when I came up with it many years ago, and it kind of stuck. Today, or rather in this episode, it is part 2 of my conversation with Jonathan Blair, and I had him on a few weeks ago, and we had such a great conversation that I thought we must have a part 2. Well, good morning, Jonathan. Thanks again for coming on to part 2 of the podcast. We were just having a conversation earlier on, and I thought that'd be valuable to just turn the recording on. I was saying that I just come back from Mexico in the still very jet lagged, last 48 hours. I had barely any sleep. And you'd offered to reschedule our podcast, and I was reflecting that I didn't want to do that because, you made the time for me, and I made a slot on his diary, and it was very intentional. And I felt that to just let it go would be like, just putting a pile of money on the driveway and just walking away. It felt like that to me. Then we were having a conversation about valuable connections and friendship and COVID and remoteness. And you were talking about how you moved to Australia. Can you just recount that anecdote again, please?
Sure. Well, first of all, great to chat to you again. It's always a pleasure, Pay. And really enjoyed our last conversation, and glad we can continue. It was interesting coming to Australia as me and my partner, my fiance. She's taken a risk with coming over also, because her friends and family are very much European based, as are my friends. But I do have family here. I've got my brother over here, so that does make a difference. And my father's also in Perth, so you would think that Perth is quite close. It's about 5 hours by flight, so it's quite far away, and hard to see them during the COVID side of things. It was an interesting experience because, moving to a new country, after about a year, year and a half, you start to slowly develop roots, and you slowly develop deeper connections with other people. I don't know, how you are as a social butterfly type person, or somebody who's a bit more introverted. I'm actually introverted. I get my energy from being by myself and kind of, reading and stuff like that. That doesn't mean that I don't enjoy socializing. I do. But coming to a new country, you start to make a few connections. You make a few surface level friends, and you get the opportunity to try and deepen that. But then COVID hits, a year and 3 months into our journey here. And all of a sudden you're taken out by the knees. And for a lot of people, I'm incredibly grateful that, number one, I've got my partner who I'm, head over heels with every day, which is a fantastic thing or a fantastic experience to have. And it was a long time getting to that, to find the right person, and so on and so forth. And, it seems like she feels the same way, and that's great. But there's so many single people, or people in not so easy relationships, that all of a sudden we're forced to just confront each other and be like, oh God, I've got to actually spend 24/7 with this person. What am I going to do? And, so you got the one thing on the socialization front, being able to meet people, talk to people, and so on and so forth. How do you build and maintain and grow those connections? And on the other side, you've got, I've got these existing relationships. Now I'm being tested on them because, it's easy. I'm just going to really go on a tangent very quickly. Russell Brand, hate him or love him. He said something very interesting on a talk show video that I saw, where the talk show host asked him, he said, "Oh, what about this actress or this person that she's lovely, she's been on the show and she's lovely." And he was like, "Oh, everybody's nice for 5 minutes, it's when you see them off there." So maybe I'll just pause there and kind of get your thoughts on it too, because I can imagine you've also had quite an experience in London in lockdown, or I'm assuming you're in London or in the UK in lockdown. What's it been like for you?
I think what you said resonated very much so. I also feel really lucky that, I was surrounded by my family during lockdown, my, foremost favorite people in the entire planet. And like you, I'm also quite introverted. So it was great. For me, it was great not having to go out and send them to activities and just being there. But also, I recognize that for a lot of people, that was quite challenging. And I don't know if you know, but I volunteer for Samaritans. And so once every week, I'm on the phones and listening to people, and it's been a really, really tough time for so many people. So making intentional connections with people in the Salesforce ecosystem, number one, to broaden my network, to get to know people like yourself that I had tangentially, I'm trying to say the word, that I have come across I've seen your name, I've heard your name through different people. Actually, quite interesting. I went to a networking event yesterday in London. I'm not in London, so to do something like that, it's again an intentional activity for me. So in the past, when I was working in London, it was one of the, oh, by the way, I'm here already. I can just go home later and just pop over to whatever building. It's in the effort level, it's like maybe level 1. It's on the way home, could grab, some bread on the way home and just go meet some people. And it felt like quite an easy activity to do. But yesterday was to make the effort to go in. And then I had to think, do I have an objective to go in? Yes, I did actually, because there were 2 talks. It was the London Admin User Group, and Amnon was giving a talk. I don't know if you know Amnon Kuvi. He's amazing. He, again, I have to podcast him. He runs his own company, plus he's an architect, and he works with a lot of partners like Gemma's Architect Club. So I've heard his name quite a bit. And he was talking about moving from workflow rules, from process builders and workflow to flow. He actually wrote a song to a Disney song, and he sang it about the whole process, how it hasn't changed very much, how some things stays the same. And it was just I thought if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be experiencing this. And the experience would be totally different on Zoom. So they don't record stuff. You have to go there. And at that time I thought this is quite magical, and then he did a live demo on, creating VAT, on the opportunity, and it was a live demo. And I thought this was great. That was what I went there to see. But the incidental connections with, there was a speed dating event as well, where, not speed dating, sorry, there was a bingo.
Bingo, yeah.
Yes, so it says, you go up to someone and go, which box can I put you in? So in those boxes, there was MuleSoft, App Exchange, Salesforce, training, project management. And I would tell people, you can put my name in the project management box. Okay, bye. Right, next person. And it was fun, but again, it felt very, I don't really remember that many people I met, and I doubt many people remember me. whom I haven't spoken to before. So all these felt like we had to recreate in a shorter amount of time, the kind of things that we would develop organically in a non-remote, non-COVID world. And it feels harder. But I think we can't stop trying. But it does make us think a lot more about the nature of relationships. And you were saying earlier on about surface friends and the friends that you keep in contact with. And I like how you said there's some friends where it doesn't matter the time's passed. You can just pick up and say, hey, 2-3 years later, and say, how's it going? How many of those type of friends do you have?
Oh, how many do I have? One passed away during COVID. So he was in South Africa, one of my very, very good friends, a guy called Gio. Another really good friend of mine in South Africa, Avron, who's coming to Sydney. He's going to come visit me in Sydney. He's fantastic. I've got a couple in the UK. I won't call out names, but I've got quite a few Greek friends in the UK actually who are really just solid people. I've got my brother over here, so maybe 5, 6 if I'm lucky. And the rest, I'm sure there's people I can phone and speak to and stuff, but there's that the distance has or the time past has taken you out of their circle, and they've gone out of your particular circle also. I suppose. Yeah. No, it's interesting. It just made me think of Gio, because he was one of the guys that didn't matter what. I could be stuck on a highway, run out of petrol or something, and I could phone him up, and he would drop everything to help me out. He was that kind of guy. So I think deep connections are hard to find, and especially when moving country, it takes time to make those kind of connections. There's an interesting, I don't know if I've talked about this previously, but I can't remember what the book is, but they talk about game theory, and they talk about this, do nice guys actually finish last, and how to be successful in, what's a good strategy to be successful in today's world. And they have something they call tit for tat. So I do something nice for you, and you do something nice for me. And so therefore we've got a good loop going. I do something nice for you, you do something nice for me, all that type of stuff. And we have a successful win-win kind of relationship. I do something nice for Barry, and Barry, screws me over. If I'm a doormat, I go back and I say, maybe I need to try harder, and I'll try to do something nice for him again. He then takes advantage. I try again. He takes advantage. I try again. He takes advantage. And as a nice guy, I lose. So they have this concept called generous tit for tat. Just tit for tat. I don't know if you've heard of it, where you get proactive people. And say if I'm proactive and I go to Barry and I say, I'm going to do something nice for you, and we'll test the relationship. And Barry does something not so nice to me, then I can cut it off and say, okay, I'm not going to work with you anymore. But with generous tit for tat, you give the option for forgiveness. So if the person then tries to make amends, then I'll give you another chance. Do it again. And if they mess you around again, then it's like, okay, cut it off for good. But oftentimes when somebody's learned from their bad experience, they come back, they do something good for you again, and then you have the potential to then build up that mutually beneficial relationship. I've gone really on a tangent there, but I don't know if you want to unpack that a bit. it's something I find very fascinating, because I feel like I used to be a doormat, and I've been much more harder now, and I'm not saying, okay, no, I'm not going to deal with that drama. I'm going to focus my attention on people and organizations that actually have that genuine to and fro.
No, I've not read that book, but as you were talking, I was visualizing in my head the pruning of a bonsai tree. Really?
Okay.
You are creating the kind of relationships and the environment around you that you want by, as you say, testing the relationship and seeing whether there's reciprocal action. And I guess it also matters the intention of the other person, whether
Yes.
it's that the other person is a perpetual taker in the relationship, in which case this is a negative relationship, net negative for you. Yeah. Or it's just someone who's just, the word that comes to mind is ignorant, but that's not what I mean, but not aware that they are like that they take, or whether what they're doing or being is perceived as taking. Maybe it's somebody who has had things done for them all their lives. So I'm liking this conversation, by the way. So for example, when I was at Make Positive, and we had another team in India, and when they came across, we also had an MP house. It was quite interesting at that time, where people from Dublin or everywhere would come and stay, and they would be temporary housemates for a bit. And one of my ex-colleagues, Carl, he's South African, living in Dublin, and he's, our mates from India, they're so messy, so incredibly messy. And I would see that at work, where coffee mugs and things like that. And I don't know if you're used to the London, who's not done the washing and who's left, the perpetual kitchen drama. And I would, I was one of them who, because of the way I was brought up at home, I always clean up, and I never really moaned about it, because it was just what I did. It made the place better. But at the back of my mind, I did say, why don't they put their mugs and stuff away, or tidy up after themselves after they've had lunch on the kitchen table? And I had the opportunity to go to India for a wedding, and I had the henna done on my hands, which I absolutely loved, where they do this intricate painting on your hands. And I was working at that time on Indian times. I was on a call while this dried, and this henna, as it dried, the thing cracked off. So it's like, it's not a paint. It's quite a thick, something. Let's say it's a little bit like mud. Okay, when they paint it on you, and as they dried, they kind of flaked off. I was on a call, and I was quite horrified at the mess I was making. And absentmindedly, I started to take a tissue and try to clean up the mess I made. And as I was talking, I was noticing this Indian lady who was kneeling next to me, and she was not talking. She was watching me and was kind of like a bit horrified at what I was doing. And I thought, oh my God, I'm making a mess. And as I was on the phone, I kind of carried on doing that. And I got off the phone and I apologized. I said, I'm really, really sorry. I made a mess. She said, no, stop. This is my job. And she cleaned up after me. And then I noticed that they had quite a few servants. And the servants would do everything, from filling your coffee mug to taking it away as soon as you finished, and you didn't have to do anything. And so I was having a conversation about my colleague about that, and he said, this is how we create jobs for other people. this is how they're earning money to make a living and to feed their families, and therefore we're used to that. And then when we come to London, we don't have anyone helping us. It's embarrassing. And and so we don't realize that that's what we're doing. So sorry, this is quite a long story, but it was about a shift in my perspective. No, they're not. Well, yes, they're a little bit spoiled, but they didn't know any different. They had people doing stuff for them, and no one told them. They just complained a lot. So sorry, very long.
No. I love it.
About people just not being aware. And I just going back to what you were saying, it's about pruning your relationships and creating environment. Sorry, I'm giggling because there's this person that you and I know. I won't say his name, but he was at 4C.
Yeah.
And he's someone who made his money with horse races, if you know who I'm talking about.
Yes.
And yes. And when he was working with me, and I was just thinking, this guy just seems to be a magnet for so much drama and so many things that happen in his life. And I think at his core, he's such a generous person that he gives so much of himself, and he lends money and he does things for others, and other people just take advantage. And thus creates the drama. And I'm thinking, if he did read the book you were talking about, perhaps his life would be calmer. I wonder if it is. I need to connect with him because he's a dad now.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, he is. You should say hi. But anyway, this was really good, I think, just talking about religion. And it's nice because it was an organic conversation, I think.
I'd love to pick up on a point or two of that, if you don't mind, because it reminded me of, I wouldn't say it's a professional story, but circa 2006, 2007, I used to go to gym. So in South Africa, in Johannesburg, there is obviously different subcultures that you get where one of the subcultures that I got in touch with after university through some university friends was gym. Going to gym, and you go to gym in a group of guys and some girls, and everyone just spends more time talking than actually doing gym, And Gio was actually one of my friends that I met there at the gym. And I had another friend of mine, I won't mention his name, but he's a very good looking boy. Okay. And so he came to me the one day because, I was trying to figure out my romantic strategy at the time. That's all I'll say about it. But I'd single for a long time. So I met with him and he said, "Oh, John, it's a great thing. Internet dating. It's fantastic. I put my profile up, I put my picture up, and I've been in like 15 dates in 2 weeks or something like that." And I went, "Oh, that's fantastic." Put my picture up, went on the internet date. He showed me how to make a profile and all that. And I just got crickets, couldn't. Then I sent messages to probably everybody on the site and didn't get many responses. But the point I'm trying to make is, apart from embarrassing myself, is, for somebody like him, where he is an incredibly good-looking guy, he just naturally has that attention and people wanting to do stuff with him and so on and so forth, because he has that social status, that social value that comes with being, well built and good looking and so on and so forth. And I've had female friends who've had the same thing. Where there's this, and we could talk about, that we could even bring it into the whole, what the conservatives call the woke conversation around, sort of privileged and previously disadvantaged and so on and so forth, about, you know, marginalized minorities and things like that. And it's until somebody has walked in somebody else's shoes and actually experienced what it's like not to have things given to you on a platter. And, you know, me being South African, I think we've spoken about this in our last thing, where there's that innate kind of superiority complex. You've got to understand what it's, well, not you, it's important for me to try and understand what it would be like to be a minority, to not have things given to me on a platter, to have the kind of, you know, I think they call them microaggressions. And it's just a microaggression, but it's not just one, it's constant. It's built into the language. It's all these types of things. And, you know, yes, I think sometimes it goes a bit far, but it goes a bit far from our reference point in terms of like, no, we've got to, like, you know, everybody gets a medal and all that type of stuff. I'm not going to get into that, but yeah, sorry, I kind of went on a tangent myself and got lost in the shallow end.
No, that's fine. What you're talking about is empathy, really. And if I bring it back to the purpose of the podcast in the first place, which is, you know, talking about the business of doing Salesforce in today's world, it's about communication, isn't it? And so, you know, I'm doing this series of workshops for my business. And if you talk about communication styles and you Google it, or leadership styles, there's so many frameworks. But if I abstract it all, it's all about, I feel, this is just my opinion, it's about empathy. I think once if you're, you know, just taking your words, if you're able to, we'll never be able to walk in someone's shoes, but if you can imagine or understand their mental models and their constructs. Well, I think one of my advantages is that I do this volunteer work and I'm privy to the other side. So let's just say, this is a slightly triggering topic for me, but I'll just share it. So I was in a very abusive relationship before I got married. Physical, emotional, mental, all of it. And I have a perception from that relationship. Now, as a Samaritan on the phone, I talk to many people. Sometimes the abuser rings up and I have to listen, and the conversation follows the same lines that I would with any caller, that it's an active listening process. I do not judge, and we explore how they feel. And so I have this view. I'm given the privilege of taking a peek at someone's life from their point of view. And sometimes it can be vastly different from what I think from where I sit.
Yeah.
So that's an example. And then the many different examples where just by having an open conversation, you open the door. And if you don't have a judging way of talking or blaming or any of those things, or then people will let you open the door a bit more, and then you get to a peek into their world, and that allows some empathy to flow. And you think, actually, you know, their lives aren't that easy either, or a generational one, you know, being able to speak to somebody much older, you know, when in passing, I think, oh, that's such a grumpy, rude old man to barge in front of me. And then if you could peek into their brain, you could see, actually, you know, they're in pain, their wife's in hospital, they're in a hurry, provide some empathy and not be angry. That's in, like in a personal world. But if you shift it to professional one, you can probably translate it to why is that person behaving in a specific way during workshops and shutting people down, having that difficult conversation, but in a safe way, and trying to be in their shoes while they're talking just opens that conversation a lot more. So I think that kind of segues quite nicely, actually, because you just finished a discovery. We were trying to schedule this conversation for a while. Just talk me through. You don't have to give specifics. So you've been in the industry for a while now, and someone's told you, I need you to do this 4-week discovery. So it'd be great to hear you approaching from 2 angles. One is about how you feel now being, is it just one of those things where you go, I've done so many, I can do this one in my sleep. So your emotional approach to that. And the other one is if you can just talk about the mechanics of that. Just only because I've just kind of finished my course showing people how to do a discovery and how to do what a 6-week one looks like, but from a project manager point of view. So if you can just, share your answer from both sides, that would be great, I think.
Sure, I'll do my best, and it'll be off the top shelf, so
absolutely,
non-filtered. I just do want to pause and say I just want to express my admiration to you for being a survivor and for making it through what sounds like it would have been a very challenging relationship to get to where you are now with the husband and the kids and that. So I just want to express my admiration for that. I have friends and close ones who have experienced that, and it's just it's also a triggering for me, I would say. But just want you to know that particular thing. Anyway, switching gears to talking about discovery. It's an interesting one because I love doing discoveries. I love that design and discovery process. When we have enough time to do it, and we can really go into depth with the customer and make the connections with the customer that allow us to, it's about earning the platform to do further work with them, I think. And comes back to, so when I was at 4C, the CEO of 4C in Europe, the chairman of 4C in Europe, Johan van Ech, I can never get it right. It's a Belgian name. Johan van Genechtigen, I think. He's gonna, if he ever listens to this, he's gonna phone me up and tell me, hey. But Johan, fantastic guy, and him and his management team over there had put together some training which they had before we joined them, talking about moments of truth. And it's a marketing term, moments of truth. And actually it takes me back to my LRN days in 2010, because we would package ethics and compliance training as moments of truth. But the whole idea about moments of truth is you have a journey with somebody, and you have critical points in that journey that are really, really important to just hit it out of the park. And you might not do as well in the second engagement with them or the third engagement, but because you've set that bar and you've set that expectation, and they know, okay, this person can hit 100% or they can hit 95%. They're capable, they're strong. So the very first, the project kickoff meeting has got to be really tight, good agendas, follow the agenda, actions after the meeting, first workshop, really solid Miro or mural boards, or whiteboards if you're doing it in person, have everything organized, everything in place. Everybody has a role, everybody has a voice. And a facilitation, especially online. I've done most of my design and discovery online now for the last 2.5 years, or 2 years, is to be really proactive in calling people and saying, hey, Angela, what do you think? David, what do you think about this? Sarah, what about this particular piece? And just really seeding that conversation, getting people comfortable talking, and making sure to call out everybody in the call at least in the first 10-20 minutes. What do you think about that, Dave? Oh, we're going to talk about this, and does this fit into your area, Sarah? And so on and so forth. So it's kind of it's getting people just over that first hurdle of, I can say something and I'm safe saying something. Because my response to somebody saying something in the first place is genuinely, oh, that's an interesting point. And somebody might ask, what's this? Other people might think it's a silly question. I'll go, oh, that's a great question. And I'm glad you asked, because it helps me understand where you're at. It's kind of that ping, 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 ping. It's almost like one of those old, I'm sure the super fast modems do the same thing, but the ping, pinging from my machine to the internet service provider and back. And then I start to build a map of who's who in the zoo, who's who in the room. And then kind of taking that relationship and seeding it through the process. Because for me, design and discovery is predominantly around the relationship and understanding that we have with the customer throughout that process, and how do we enhance and build in that relationship. And there's points in that journey where it can just fall off a cliff. And it's important to recognize that, just because you're doing well today doesn't mean that the next interaction is not going to just, explode on you. So it's also about backing it all up with, good governance, capturing actions, capturing decisions, getting email sign off, making sure that we have a RACI, we have an understanding of who's doing what in each situation, making sure that the team themselves is drilled in, okay, we have this scenario happening. The customer's asking for a requirement. He's just signed off requirements 2 days ago. He's asking for another one. What do we do in this situation? And, leading up to that point of requirement sign off, making sure that the customer understands, if we have to have a stable set of requirements in order to build a solution design from. If we don't have a stable set of requirements, we can't move forward. So if you introduce another requirement after that, it's either going to be a change request if it's significant, or it's going to impact on our solution design time. Obviously, there's moments where you've got to give and take a bit, and there's things like that. But having very clear governance around those milestone points and following them, because it's too easy, and I've done it, we've all done it, where it's, just see if you can get that one in there, or just, we used to call it feeding the stray cat in Cloud Socius. I think Gareth coined the term, where, the stray cat comes one day and says, oh, bit of food, please. And you give it a cookie, The next day there's 2 stray cats. The next day there's 4. So, yeah, maybe I'll pause there. And is that kind of the approach that you were looking for?
Perfect. It just slides right in. I can see myself clipping this bit just to say, hey, look, this is why governance is important during discovery, because you really don't want stray cats. Actually, I'm going to interrupt you there with one of my favorite topics, which is, did we talk about this the last time, which is waterfall versus agile versus hybrid? I don't think we did.
I think we might have bounced into it, but it's a topic of conversation at the moment. I've literally got off a call yesterday with our team at my current company, because there's, I had it the same at a previous company. People are trying to figure this out, and I feel like I've heard a bit of your point of view around it, and I'd love to you to expand on that, because I'm a great believer in, doesn't matter what methodology you use, if the client's on board, if you're on board, if people are drilled in doing the right things, and you have the right stakeholders and buy-in, and you have the right expectations set, and you're not setting weird expectations of, oh, we'll deliver 300,000 points in the next sprint, then it can work because everybody's on the same page. I'm a big fan, I think, in professional services, the hybrid agile, waterfall agile approach is the one to use, simply because the customer constraints of budget and time and so on and so forth. The customer wants to know how much they're going to spend and so on and so forth. And if you're plugging into an organization that already has scaled agile or Scrum Agile, Kanban, or whatever, working within their own teams, then you resource org in, because then the risk is on their delivery, their governance, and all you are is becoming a resource against that. Sorry, I've just done that pitch to people who are going, yes, John, we know how to run projects. Sorry, maybe I'll pause there.
No, absolutely, 100% agree. You've nailed it totally. I think the challenge has been that the word agile has been thrown around so much that so many organizations think they know what it is, but they don't really. So they hear the bit about we welcome change and think that the following part of sentences, without affecting time, budget, and anything else on the project. So we get a lot of those, or I hear a lot of situations where you get organizations going, I want agile as long as it doesn't impact anything else. We have loads of stray cats here. Just take them into your next sprint. So that's kind of where it falls. But I've heard, where it all aligns, it works really well. And I use the same analogy with polyamory, and I talk to my kids a lot about this, because they're learning at school about the LGBT kind of thing, and accepting people and who they are and how they are. And they've got friends with 2 moms and 2 dads and things like this. And then I extend it further and say, well, there are families that are more than 2. You might have 3 or 4. And the dynamics are complex and different, and none of them are the same. But if it works for all of them, it can be a really beautiful thing. Because this was something I came across, and in my mind, I think we talked about it, I come from a very conservative background in Malaysia, and learning about it, just it sounded like something that, went against my brain, like partnerships 2. How can it be more than 2? And I read more about it and, realized that there's some situations that can work really, really well when all the parties are aligned. They each have different roles. Some may have dual roles, etc. And so, just coming back to this, if it works for everybody, then it's the perfect one for them. However, from a consulting point of view, again, you and I align there. It needs to be a hybrid one, mainly because we do need that discovery up front. We do need to know the solution that we're going to design against your timeline and your budget, Mr. Customer. There is some wiggle room for a couple of stray cats here and there, but not a huge amount, because that would have ripple effect with integration and third-party APIs and vendors you might have in this program of work. So yes, sorry, I think we're both violently agreeing there.
No, it's all good. Do you think partners are scared of leaving agile out of their pitch?
Very much so. I think when I moved from Microsoft to Salesforce, and there was this senior PM at Make Positive, we talked quite a bit, and again, he was old school. We talked about waterfall, and I said, I'm finding it very difficult. Oh, the other shift I had was when I was working in the Microsoft world, there was very much waterfally. Not only that, but your waterfall could, there could be multiple projects overlapping. So you could have one resource working in different projects because their turn on the project isn't until a few weeks later. And so that was really a good and bad, and really good from a project point of view, and flexibility with the customer. That was one thing I had to come to grips with, was that we were flexible with the customer. As long as the customer gave us 1 week notice, we could shift this resource or this part of the project a bit later on with no impact to them. And then when I came over, and Salesforce was very much agile, and I had, I did a certification and all of that from PM point of view. I couldn't see how it worked because you were going at a pace that a lot of companies couldn't. And in a lot of the projects that I was on that didn't go fantastically well, it was because the customer couldn't keep up with us. They just weren't used to producing decisions and reviewing documents on top of their day job that their management team or leadership team hadn't given them support to do. They still had their targets to meet, but now you want them to do UAT, and so I felt that quite challenging, trying to flip that mindset from waterfall to agile. But I gave, I heard so much about it in the Salesforce world that I thought I have to give it a really good chance. So everyone I speak to, I'm trying to find out, how has it worked in your projects? And then I realized actually they weren't true agile. They didn't deploy to production an MVP at the end of every sprint. And sometimes the sprint was 6 weeks. That's like a mini waterfall. It's not. Do you know what I mean? So it was always going on in my head. So I'm always very curious when I'm speaking to people like yourself. You've done big projects and small projects, and how has it worked? And I'm coming to the conclusion that from a consulting point of view, it really needs to be hybrid for all the reasons we talked about. But yes, the word agile seems to creep in a lot.
It's almost like if you don't mention it, then the customer's like, but why aren't you mentioning agile? It's like, for me, I mean, I'm a Scrum Master, but I've only used it barely. Look, I'd love to work on a full agile implementation, but it would be at a BAU, at a partner, something like that. I was a resource org to a big insurance company over here when I first came over from Australia for a year. And again, it's getting the right resources. They had something crazy like seven or 8 streams of work, each with squads between 10 and 15 people on them. We spun up a squad to do some new business work, but using the case object and doing case lifecycle and insurance lifecycle on that. And we were there. We did a POC first. We earned our way in to be able to stand up a squad and so on and so forth. But we banged the drum for a good product owner from their side for at least 4 months before we got one, and then we got a brilliant one. He was the right person, and they allocated him full time to the role. And so he was taken out of the new business team, and he was placed with us, and he worked with us, and it's just fantastic. And then they actually saw that he was even swamped, and so they got in 2 people from that team and helped them with it. And it's that we come in as partners and we say, oh yes, this is the engagement. It's going to be 400-500K, over a period of 3 to 4 months or however long it is, 2 to 4 months or however long it is. And sometimes I think we forget, I know I do sometimes, of the level of CapEx and OpEx investment that they have to make, not only in the platform in terms of licensing, but in terms of the BAU staff that need to be pulled away from, sometimes business critical work to be able to support us. And so there's definitely a level of respect I think that has to be given to customers and engagement. I'm somebody who makes an effort to. It just kind of comes back to the discovery thing of connecting really well with my customers and the clients that I work with on an emotional and personal level also, because I understand it is personal to people. Work is work, and you can say it's just business or it's just not, but work is very personal to people because it's their they survive off of it. They thrive off of it, and so on and so forth. For example, this discovery that we've just come off of now, we've gotten to a point where the design that we put in front of them is not tenable because it's the cost to implement is too high, and so we're still partners, and we're going to work with them to look at alternates. But sometimes, and so I'm looking back saying, what could I have done better? And I think I did really well in the engagement. But what are those points in that engagement that maybe if I'd been stronger and called a halt to proceedings and said, do you understand that going full custom in this particular approach is going to cost you a lot of money, in the long run? And so I've kind of, I'm elated that it's finished and it finished well, and I think we kicked a lot of goals. I'm not so happy because I think we've taken, not that we've taken them down the wrong path. We've all, us and the client included, gone down a particular path that's ended up, that's going to be very expensive to implement. Just makes me want to ask, when you think about you've obviously worked at Microsoft and Salesforce and so on and so forth also, and you have pure dev capability of organizations that do React or they do front end work and so on and so forth, purely outside of a platform. And then you've got platforms like Microsoft or like Salesforce and so on and so forth that provide a lot of out of the box functionality, a lot of clicks to code, a lot of developer options, but that has limitations and constraints also. And looking back through my career, I would only say 20 to 30% of customers that have worked on Salesforce with me have really wanted the not vanilla, but we're going to use the platform for what it's designed for, and we're not going to try and bastardize it and change it and so on and so forth. And then 70% of customers have gone, okay, we want to do our business process like this, and then we want to do another one like that, and then we want to do, let's try that one over there, and they want to just use the platform, and the operating model is so dramatically different from what the platform is actually designed to do. Or even they want to use a particular feature, and we can get quite creative, and we can take some features and make a process out of it, and it's quite slick and elegant and so on and so forth. But it's 70% of the time it's not straightforward, is it?
I think for Salesforce, it's a product of their marketing. We can do all of this. You don't need developers. It's low code, no code. We go into so many industries. It's a CRM. We could be customized to anything and everything. So there's it takes two hands to clap in this situation. Therefore, you set the expectations with customers already, right? And so, like yourself, I've been in projects where they have tried to turn a bicycle into a car. Yes, it can. You can add more wheels. You can stick an engine, and you can kind of put a frame on it. But is it a car? Exactly. So, I think there's a mismatch in expectations. They believe that it can do that. And then I go back to, just because it can, does it mean it should? And I think that question needs to get asked a lot more. And it's a brave question to ask, because you are, from the naysayers, you're casting doubt on the art of the possible, right? So it takes somebody who's very assertive and very courageous, and be able to articulate why you shouldn't, even though you could. And I think if more within a sales team and a marketing team, if more of them frame that question and help shape expectations. So I keep going back to the fact that a lot of situations come about because expectations haven't been met. So I'm doing a workshop on conflict management soon, and why did conflict happen? Apart from, fighting over limited resources, we put that aside. From a project point of view, it is about managing expectations. So going back to what you were talking about, it is not a unique situation. You run a discovery and you find out in the end, along with the customer, that it's been too expensive. And I think if you abstract it slightly, the situation could have been avoided. I wouldn't say it couldn't have been avoided, but could have been managed in a slightly different way. If, again, it takes both sides. If the account management team, right from the beginning, already has an idea of their budget capabilities, the outer boundaries of where it is, and the ability to provide at the sales stage. I know we don't have any details, etc., but a rough order of magnitude. Are we talking between 2 to 5 million pounds here, or are we, what the ballpark is? Is the 2 to 5 million scary to you, Mr. Customer? Just having that conversation. And if they say, well, okay, as long as no more than 5, we can't stretch to 5, but I need a definite. So that's your boundary. Then when you do your discovery, mentally, you do have some idea of the costs. Talking about point-to-point integration, then that's insanely crazy. I've had one project that did that. And if you talk about MuleSoft, whatever middleware you're using, then you have some idea about what that feels like. And just checkpointing with the customer throughout may have helped that, but it takes that management setting of. So I was in your situation once, and we got to. So as a project manager, I do so you guys do the technical solution playback. This is how we're going to build a system. The PM, the account manager, we do the commercial side of things. Right. Your team have loved our solution. This is how much it's going to cost. This is a statement of work. And that's where we go, wow, my God, are you crazy?
Yeah, the sticker shock.
Expected. Yes. And then, and they came back and said, we expected this figure. And we want, how did you get that figure? And this company I was at, we did a postmortem all the way to the beginning. We really wanted to know how they thought that was going to cost a quarter. That was how big that gap was. And we wondered if the sales team had lowballed it in the beginning, because that's not fair. And then we traced all the way back to one of the initial sales decks right in the beginning, where there was some options, resourcing options. I can't remember what it was, but option A, option B, option C, big team on site, onshore plus offshore, and then another one slightly blended with knowledge transfer. And, just, it was a tentative, this could be what you might have to decide on. And so as they went on, they picked option C in their head and they slotted different things. And then they came up with a figure. That's how it happened, really. But we only realized when we did the postmortem, we set that expectation accidentally. and we did checkpoint as we went along. So
that's fascinating. That's fascinating because it kind of like stuff surfacing for me around it, especially around people hear what they want to hear, I think. And, so even saying, look, this is going to be, if you want to get pixel perfect, this is going to be really complex. It's going to be lots of work. Even did t-shirt sizing to help them to make a decision between two types of templates, Aura versus LWR, and t-shirt sizing is its own animal anyway, because you get an XL plus that's 20 days or more, in the sizing. So it could be 2000 days, but it's just massive, and I do find it interesting. Like, people definitely hear what they want to hear throughout a journey, but it's also like I'm going to pull on a stereotype here. I'm not going to mention which particular stereotype, but you know that old story where you get the husband or the guy and his girlfriend or whatever, and she says, "Oh, my brother wants to come and stay for a week or whatever." And then, the brother kind of arrives, and, a week later, there's 10 members of the family who are staying with them, type of thing. In some cultures, that's more normal. And I feel like sometimes that also happens within these engagements, and it boils down to one thing, and that's trust. Are we doing the right things to build the trust with the customer, where they can trust us with saying, look, this is our budget? Because in the customer's head, I know what's happening. The customer's thinking, if I tell them what the budget is, they're going to just size it at the budget, and they want to get everything in there.
Yeah.
But it shoots themselves in the foot, because, we could call out and say, no, it's going to be double that or triple that. Like, forget about it. No, we don't want to tell you the budget. And then we're going through the process of, doing stuff. And I'm not talking about this particular engagement, but previous engagements where, that basic trust around true partnership around budget and stuff isn't there, and then it ends up burning people. I love the group of people that I've worked with in this discovery. I think they're a fantastic group, really clever, really aligned on their purpose, and they have a really great kind of sort of strategy and program to do some fantastic things at the company. And so I think we've had a good result anyway, because we've gone down that road. We've shown them for just the design and discovery cost how much it's going to be on that side. But that doesn't preclude them from doing other work on the Salesforce ecosystem. They already have other stuff on there, but just for this piece, it's better to look externally and API integrate in to get the right functionality from the system. So yeah, that trust is a big one, isn't it?
I think it's right. And so what I always say is the discovery is the courting process. It is, look, this is how we operate. We, ask the right questions. We understand you. And this is where we can show the value we can create for you if you if you put a ring on the finger. But at the same time, as you say, not only the situation you talked about could happen, but they could also look at it and go, I could get someone else to do this much, much cheaper. Thank you for your solution design, your documents, your integration documents, and your user stories. I'm going to get my cousin to do it. And it does happen. It does happen. And I've also had situations where they've come back because we now have to unpick, and it's now going to cost them a lot more because there's now technical debt to unravel. But all we can do is do our best and to show integrity and to show them what we can do, and that's that really. So it sounds like you've done a great job there already, and it's always quite nice to come out from discovery thinking that was a good one, because you came away ticking all the boxes that you went in with.
Yeah, and I think on this one I definitely did. I had a great team around me, and the right people pulled their weight at the right times. And so I think we did what we set out to do, and it was actually separate to that, the builder proposal that kind of was a bit of a shock. But there's definitely a lot of value there for what the customer needs to do in the other aspects. And yeah, hopefully we'll get to be a part of that journey. But there's so much work. I don't know if you have the same thing in the UK at the moment. We are struggling to find good resource. It's probably a conversation for another day, because I think we could. I feel like we could talk the hump of a camel.
I quite like this. Maybe I'll do more of it doesn't have to just do with Salesforce and projects and work, and talk about other stuff. I happened to listen to a Joe Rogan podcast this one time. His podcasts are really long, 3-4 hours. Oh, wow. And I caught one where he was interviewing Peter Attia, and I like Peter Attia very much. And he's a doctor, by the way. And that's how I learned about fasting and things like that. So his mission in life is to get to a situation, I'm going off on tangent now, but to get to a situation where you have an Olympic for the 100-year-old person. What would an Olympic for a 100-year-old person look like? Okay, it would be the ability to squat and pick up your great-grandchild, to be able to squat, so your joints have to be strong. Ability to put your luggage in the overhead compartment. So, so he's talking about body health and things like that. So I was really, I thought, that's what I want. I don't want to be the fastest or, skinniest or whatever. I want to live a long time and live well. Anyway, so I heard
the ability to go through the night without having to get up to pee.
I don't know if you can actually exercise for that, because that's an internal thing, isn't it? Just don't drink. Don't drink before
Sorry, I had to throw that in.
So anyway, he was on this podcast, and I thought I'd listen to it, and I thought, my goodness, they're talking about hunting. He was just having a casual conversation with Joe Rogan and Peter, and I discovered things about Peter that I didn't know, that he what he did archery and things like that, and I thought, okay, this podcast is a bit too long for me. And then I said, when we were talking, I felt this feels like that sort of podcast, and maybe it's a little bit more for me than it is for my audience, and maybe I should do a lot more, because it feels like the conversations that everybody has some element of value to other people. So all our conversations around connections, around people, around friends, and COVID and moving across, I think has value anyway. So maybe we'll just do more of these, and that means I get to talk to you more.
I'd love to, like round 3 and stuff like that. Yeah, it's interesting, because I think that's part of my philosophy. You asked about the discovery and client engagement, is to find the human in the interaction. I think we've all dealt with people who are very much like, nope, this is business, and we don't talk about anything outside of this box. And those are soul-crushing kind of engagements. And maybe I'd go too far on the let's have a conversation and stuff side. I do know that when the rubber hits the road, we all kind of align, and we get shit done. Or like my old CEO Gareth called, we get the hustle on. But yeah, we're all human. I think COVID's really brought that to the fore, with working from home and working in welcome to my blurry study that you can't see at the moment in Zoom, but I see like the lovely picture on your back wall there, for example. It's a little bit of the personal, And work is personal. Yes, you've got to have boundaries. I've worked at companies where leaders start going on to onto the kind of guru, want to be a guru mentality and stuff like that, and it's just awful. Like, get out quickly. There's always got to be a boundary, but yeah, there's also got to be a bit of the personal, and that, I think that's really important. I don't know how how you align to that.
100%. I think I like having conversations with people, but at the same time, I know Zoom fatigue is real, which is difficult. And if you have a meeting, a lot of people feel like, just taking 5-10 minutes to, how's your weekend, just feels fake and constructed. There is that feeling, even though it shouldn't be that way, because we have to make time for the personal things, especially nowadays. So I already know what our next topic should be for the next time. I think it is the resourcing issue. It'd be great to hear your thoughts about it, because it is painful right now.
Yeah.
But there's this whole set of net new talent that no one's giving opportunity to. So I would love to hear a bit more about your thoughts, especially now that you're in Australia and what you're seeing over there. So that'd be great. So why don't we? Oh. My goodness, it's 1 hour 20 now. Yeah. Much longer than I thought. So let's call it a day for this one, and let's connect again after your vacation, maybe at some point, and let's do round 3, because I really enjoyed today, even though it was a lot less worky than normal.
Yeah, no, probably because I'm getting into holiday mode right for tomorrow, but and I think you've just come off the back of your holiday, so I think we're
wide awake now.
We're dovetailing across. Yeah. Brilliant to chat to you again, Faye, and grateful for the time, and yeah, I really enjoy it. Having people who are interested in what I have to say and who say interesting stuff that I'm interested in listening to is it's a privilege. So
it's a two-way street. I'm glad that we connected and we can get to do this a bit more. So thanks, Jonathan. And with that, I'll say goodbye. Have a great holiday, and we'll catch up when you get back.
Awesome, Faye. You take care.
All right. Take